Have you ever dreamed of a creative career? A job that feels less like work and more like a labor of love? Well, for so many people in industries like media, film, and gaming, that dream is kind of curdling into a nightmare. Today, we're going to dive into this paradox of creative work and explore why these passion-fueled careers are at the very center of a really profound mental health crisis.
Okay, let's just get right into it. We're all sold this incredible dream, right? A life of passion, self-expression, making art. But the reality for so many professionals, it's a whole different story. Instead of fulfillment, they are dealing with massive anxiety, burnout, unjust working conditions, and this constant nagging uncertainty. So how on earth did this gap between the dream and the reality get so huge?
Well, to really get it, we have to pull apart the systemic issues that turn these dream jobs so toxic. And look, this isn't just about a few bad bosses or some tough projects. It's about the way the entire system is designed from the ground up.
So here's a huge piece of the puzzle. The way a lot of these media businesses are set up is to transfer risk. All the financial uncertainty, the pressure of a project failing, the market instability, all of that gets offloaded from the corporation right onto the backs of the individual creatives. They're the ones who end up bearing the true cost.
And this connects to the next big problem. There's this intense pressure for your job to become your entire identity. You don't just work as a journalist, you are a journalist. This total blurring of the lines between yourself and your work is not just expected, it's often celebrated. But when your identity is your job, any professional setback feels like a deep personal failure, and there's just no space left to ever switch off.
All this pressure builds and builds until you get this culture of, as one recent Australian study perfectly put it, acting like everything's okay. It just captures this idea of performative wellness so well. Even with all the insane pressure, creatives feel forced to pretend that they're fine. And this makes all the suffering invisible, and it just keeps the cycle going. Because if everyone is acting like it's okay, who is going to be the first to admit they need help?
Which brings us to a massive psychological question. If the system is so clearly broken and the conditions are so damaging, what keeps all these passionate, talented people attached to these careers? Well, the answer lies in this really interesting concept called cruel optimism.
Seriously, think about that for a second. Why would anybody willingly stay in a job that is making them sick, anxious, and feeling completely undervalued? It seems totally illogical, right? But there's a really powerful emotional trap at play here.
So what exactly is cruel optimism? It's a concept from the cultural critic Lauren Berlant, and it describes this very specific kind of trap. It's when the thing you desire most, like a dream career, becomes the very thing that's holding you back and hurting you. You stay attached to the promise of the dream, even when the reality is just grinding you down. And why? Because letting go of that hope feels like you'd be giving up on who you are.
And here's how this trap works. First, there's this belief that the dream is almost within reach. It's always just around the corner, which keeps you running on the treadmill. Second, you have the glorification of the hustle, this idea that you either work yourself to death or you basically don't exist in the industry. And finally, the career becomes the only option, where rejecting that fantasy feels like a total failure of your life's purpose.
Okay, so that's the problem. It's heavy stuff. But here's the good news. The very people caught in this trap are starting to find a new collective path forward. This isn't about individual resilience anymore. It's about finding something called radical hope. So what is radical hope? And let's be really clear, this is not just wishful thinking. It's a powerful, practical idea from the philosopher Jonathan Lear. It starts with a shared understanding, a collective recognition that the way things are is just not sustainable. It's that moment when a group of people says enough is enough. And that simple declaration is what creates the space to imagine and build a better future together, even if that future seems impossible right now.
And this isn't just some theory. It's happening right now. We're seeing the rise of new media unions, built around shared emotional experiences. We're seeing collectives like the Liberty Guild creating totally new supportive business models. Across music, gaming, journalism, there are these powerful calls for artist-centric systems, for safe labor practices, and for fair treatment. This is radical hope in action.
So what does building that healthier future actually look like? Well, it requires a real blueprint for change, one that operates on every single level of the industry. And this model here shows us that you can't just fix one thing. Change has to happen everywhere, all at once. At the very top, we have to challenge those big societal myths, like the idea of the tortured artist. Institutionally, whole industries need to start talking to each other. Inside organizations, leadership has to become more empathetic.
We've got to review the toxic daily routines, and finally, individuals need real tools and real support. Now, one of the most critical tools, especially at that individual and organizational level, is something called mental health literacy. It's about moving beyond just telling people to be more resilient and actually giving them a practical toolkit they can use.
So what does that actually mean? Well, mental health literacy is a concrete skill set. It's knowing how to prevent mental health issues, it's recognizing the early signs in yourself and in others, it's knowing where to get help, and having the basic first aid skills to support a colleague who's struggling. I mean, just imagine how different creative workplaces could be if this was just a standard professional skill.
This quote from a creator really just gets to the heart of this new mindset, doesn't it? It's all about reclaiming your agency. That passion, that drive, that creativity, that shouldn't be something the industry uses to control you. It's something you need to own. And that brings us to what might be the most powerful idea of all. The solution here isn't to become cynical or to love your work any less. In fact, it's the exact opposite. The deep passion that makes creatives so vulnerable is also their greatest potential source of strength. That love for the work can be channeled into a transformative power for collective change.
So we end with this question. Can the very thing that has been exploited, that deep, driving passion for creativity, actually become the engine for building a more just, healthy, and sustainable future for creative work? Well, the evidence suggests that a movement to do just that is already underway.